So hi guys, this is our CDB Hive, and today we're going to run through how the CDB Hive goes together and the different components within the CDB Hive and how they work all as one unit to create sections. So this is a large roof. This is the middle box or riser. 21 section crate, brood chamber and floor. Now you probably see the difference in the floor straight away. It's a bit narrower than a national and it's got quite a large lantern board. This is just to give them a better advantage lantern and taking off from the hive, so it's quite a deep lantern board. Standard floor would have been wooden originally, but with Varroa and all now we're using mesh floors with a correct sheet that slides in and out the back for ventilation. You'll notice that the floor is flat here, there's no ridge like a national, so the brood chamber sits down and actually creates the bee space. The brood chamber sits here off it, and there's an overlap, you can see it here on the side, which makes it nice and snug. The biggest advantage of this hive is one of the snuggest hives for overwintering bees. The entrance block slides in here, and if you want to reduce the space you can slide it over vertically on one side or the other, but they've always got an entrance in the middle, and if there's quite a good flow on you can take out the entrance block completely. If you want to move the bees you just reverse it, sits into place and then is sealed off for moving the bees. Got a wee porch here. Everything around this hive is designed to keep as much water out as possible. You see then we've got a standard 11 frame brood chamber with a dummy board. This is a single-sided dummy board, and the idea of that is to allow air up the back of the dummy board and out through the top of the hive, so it's not cooling the brood chamber. You'll see all these plastic spacers. Generally they're not used on Hoffman frames because a Hoffman frame is a self-spacing frame, but they're required when the section crate sits into place here so that the bees can't get up around the ends of it left and right. So that it sits here so it stops the bees going up either side of the hive. That's the only time we use spacers or end spacers on Hoffman frames is when we're doing section honey. The section crate then, this is a standard 21 section crate. You can get a 42 section crate for a national, but we find a 21 section crate works best with most, and we'll run into that in a little bit. The section crate comprises of 21 sections, and they're 3 wide and they're 7 deep. The first section goes in against the front, and the front's got a slight angle here, 45, and you'll know the back because it's got a solid piece down the bottom here. And these rails create a bee space underneath the section, so the section crate can sit directly on top of the brood chamber. Just going to grab a couple of bits here. When you buy this you get a section crate and it's got 21 sections, 7 section wax and 6 dividers. The dividers only go in the middle, so you don't do a divider on the first one and then you start it straight after the first couple of sections are in place and the divider sits in there. And so on right the way down, so you only need 7 dividers. When you get to the back then, you'll have a dummy board that sits in, and the dummy board has the same wee 45 top and bottom, and that's to allow the bees a little bit more space on the front and back sections to get in to fill them more evenly. Originally, when the sections would have gone into place, you'll see this section crate on the side, there would have been a small spring, and the spring would have put down in the back here to hold the dummy board in place to keep them nice and snug. If you don't keep them nice and snug, you'll find it very difficult to remove in time because the bees will have propolized around them. So the snugger the dummy board is to the sections, the easier it'll be to work the crate in time. So all we'd ever do there is roll a little bit of cardboard and jam it down the back and keeps it tight, because most of us lost the spring as soon as we got it, so the cardboard's always handy. Now, this sits right over the brood chamber, and traditionally we would never use a queen excluder with this hive, and even yet we try not to use a queen excluder. This is actually my queen excluder. Any flat bit of cardboard at all, a cereal box or something like that's the best. You don't want to use anything like milk cartons or anything plastic because it's going to create condensation in the middle of the brood chamber. And when this sits in place, it actually covers, you want it to cover the 5th, 6th and 7th frame of the hive. And the idea is you're capping the queen at the highest point of her laying. So if you can stop her from laying in the 5th, 6th and 7th frame and going up into those sections, generally she'll fizzle out from there and it'll be smaller. So when it sits across here, you want nice flat cardboard, single layered cardboard, so that the section crate sits down and doesn't rock. So the flatter the cardboard, the better. And it just covers the 5th, 6th and 7th frame there, as you can see. And that's enough to stop the queen laying at the highest point. Now, she can come up from time to time into the sections, but it's going into a different laying pattern. Your standard frame is about 37 millimeters, half-mil frame, and a section is 50. So that offsets them right the way back. So she tends not to be able to travel directly up and down between the two, and this helps. The only time she really will go up is when you've got quite dirty frames within the brood chamber. So the cardboard works extremely well. Unfortunately, I'm never able to take one off at the end of the season to actually show anybody, because the bees eat through it over the season, and at the end you're just scraping it off the frames and you're binning it at the end. The section crate here sits snug to the front, and that allows for the airflow around the back of the hive and up through it. And within the CDB Hive, you can only ever put on 3 section crates, which is plenty. You'd have 63 sections in the year. And there's 2 positions within the middle box of the riser. So this is it in summer position and it's up high. So that actually allows for 2 section crates on top of the hive. And when you reverse it into winter position, there's still enough room for 1 crate, even in winter position. You'll see here, now if I can tilt this forward for you guys, right the way around here there's quite a large cavity, and you want that cavity. What we do is we put everything from bed sheets, pillowcases, anything like that in round, and we're trying to create as much heat and insulation as possible. And the more heat and insulation we can create within the hive, the easier it is for the bees to produce wax. Heat is key to sections. You can't get enough heat into any of these. People often will call and say there's quite a large space round. What stops the bees getting in is the plastic end spacers we were on about earlier, because they can't get past them. And then the insulation right the way around is key for producing the sections. So that's a good example. The section crate sits snug to the front and you've got three spaces round to insulate. Now, as I'm saying, you can reverse this box. This is in winter position at the time, so you'd have a second crate here, and the third crate actually sits within the cavity space of the roof. Before we move on to the roof, we're actually going to show you the crown board and how the crown board actually works. It's slightly different to a national. You'll see here it's quite thick on 2 sides. You can use the same porta bee escapes that you would use in any other hive, but the idea of the section crate is that it's wide on the bottom of the section crate and narrow on top, so you need a crown board that actually suits that. So as you can see here, the edge of the crown board can sit on top, so if you're only taking off 1 section crate, you can have a section crate above and this in between, and the bees can't get past it here or here. And it also works the opposite way then. When it's on the bottom, because it's so wide, it covers there and it covers the entirety of the brood chamber. So that's why it's slightly different to any other crown board on the market. It's to do with the design of the section crate, so the crown board has to work with the section crate overall. As you move up the hive, you can still use your crown board on top the same way you normally would with a national, and it'll allow the bees to travel back and forth on top of the sections to get to the top end of the sections. So the middle box will actually put in summer position now, so you can see the overall height of the hive when it's finished. The big advantage of that is when it doubles down onto the brood chamber over winter, it gives more insulation to the hive round the outside, and it's more water protection. Every part of this overlaps, which makes it snugger and warmer all round. The brood chamber, 2 of the walls here are double walled as well, so that the frames sit completely internally, and that's all about insulation as well. The roof then, we'll see it here guys, it's quite a large cavity within the roof, and that will carry the 3rd section crate in here. You'll notice that there's a fine big hole here in the front of it, and the hole is for 2 cone escapes. One cone escape sits on the outside like this, and the other cone escape sits inside there facing outwards as well. So both cone escapes is facing outwards. The idea that when this is in place, bees can't line up and fly directly in and out of the roof. If you only put one in place, sometimes they can fly in and out of the roof, and they could set up home in there as quick if they were swarming or anything. So if you have the second one, they find it harder to line up because they have to go into this, then they've got to go back and get into the second one. So that's why we generally use 2 cone escapes within a roof. And they're included with the roof and all when it's bought. Traditionally, you would have had a ventilated block on the floor that's not needed now because of the mesh floors, and you would have a block front and back, but 1 is more than sufficient. The ridge on some of the traditional ones would have been quite high here, and that was so when you lifted the roof over and sat it down flat that the whole roof wasn't touching the ground. You know, so there's a few features that's just changed ever so slightly, but for the most part it's very original. The originals could have had anything. I've seen one coming in with 16 frames because a lot of them were made by beekeepers and they used the best of the timber that they could. They didn't cut anything off for waste. They just made more space for frames within the hive. But traditionally now they're all 11 frames with a dummy board at the back.